MSNBC legal analyst Lisa Bloom, former Florida Circuit Court Judge Alex Ferrer, and criminal defense attorney Joseph Haynes Davis. Gang, in his closing arguments, prosecutor Bernie De La Rianda drove home one message to the jury, that Zimmerman profiled Martin as a criminal, and this is part of his argument to the jury.
This innocent 17-year-old kid was profiled as a criminal. To quote the defendant, and part of my language, he was one of those that get away. Part of my language. He was one of those punks. He uttered it under his breath. And that itself indicates ill will and hatred. Because in his mind, he already assumed certain things. That Trayvon Martin was a punk, and he wasn't going to get away this time.
Mr. Davis, he spoke of criminal profiling, not racial profiling, but is that really the unsaid word in that courtroom? Is that the implication of what the prosecution is saying?
Well, as I said before, Counselor, and thank you for having me again today, that race is immutable. I mean, we see it, in fact, you see it as we look at the television, at the panel here today with the diversity that you have put together for this esteemed panel to discuss this matter. So the fact of the matter is, again, the race is immutable, and that is an underlying matter, probably. I mean, let's be serious, it is. But on the other hand, I think that Mr. De La Rianda is trying to get to the emotions of that jury to let them know that we have a minor who was unarmed, who was shot and killed, and he is trying to bring out those elements of the second-degree murder statute of this state so that they are able to look at that, and quite frankly, they should look at that only in making their decision with their deliberations.
In other words, Judge Alex, what he's trying to do is meet that element of an evil intention, which is required for a second-degree murder conviction.
Absolutely. That's what he's trying to do. I don't think he has enough. I've said that for quite a while now. To the extent that the mutterings which occur when he's in the car and when he's getting out of the car could be considered enough evil will or ill will, evil intent, and spite, they're so far removed from the shooting. And Florida law says the act that results in the death has to be motivated by ill will, hatred, spite, evil intent. And there's this big thing that happens in the middle, and that's that fight that lasts a considerable amount of time, that there's a lot of screaming about, and there's a lot of dispute about who started it. And the burden of proving who started it and the burden of proving the issue of whether it's not self-defense rests squarely with the prosecution. It's hard for them to get around that, but they're working with what they have.
Lisa, you have focused our attention on the actual physicality of that scrimmage, that fight at the end. And here's what I'm referring to in terms of how it came up today. In his closing arguments, De La Rianda also brought up this potentially key detail about the screams in the background of that neighbor's 911 call, which the defense claims were Zimmerman. Watch this.
While we're on that subject, the defendant claims that he was the only one yelling out there. So all the cries for help were only him. You got to decide whether it was him or whether it was Trayvon Martin or whether it was both of them. Had to be one of them or both. But if he's yelling and if he's down and if he's got all this blood and he's swallowing the blood, how's he able to do all that? And why is there a consistent, in terms of yells of help, help, help? Why is it muffled down? That was to make you just never lie.
Lisa, I thought that was compelling. How was he able to cry for help, as we've heard on that 911 tape time and again, if it was George Zimmerman, if in fact Trayvon Martin had his hands over his mouth and nose?
Well, because it was intermittent. That's going to be the defense argument, that the hand was there and that perhaps he got away, that this was a dynamic situation and it was a fight. I don't particularly care for this closing argument style of asking jurors questions instead of giving the prosecution theory of the case. He says, maybe it was one person, maybe it was two people. You can decide that. This is closing argument. It's time for the prosecution to have a theory of the case. It's time for the prosecutor to tell the jury, there's one person who was yelling. That was Trayvon Martin. That was the victim in this case. To really put it away. His style was to raise so many questions. If I'm the defense attorney, I'm going to stand up and say, you know why he asked you all those questions? because this is a case about reasonable doubt. And I bet you still have a lot of questions. And if you go back into that jury room with all of those questions, you have to return a defense.
All right, how effective do you think the prosecution was on the issue that you've been raising about access to the weapon and inconsistencies you've pointed out about George Zimmerman's testimony?
Well, I was glad they raised it for the first time in this trial in closing argument that George Zimmerman said on the reenactment video that the gun was holstered inside his pants behind him. And at last, that videotape was showed to the jury in closing argument. But there were so many missed opportunities in this trial. For example, when they're working with the dummy to show that's where the gun was holstered. If I'm the prosecutor, I'm going to drive this home. This is not going to be a question I'm going to let the jury linger with. I'm going to say directly to the jury, it was impossible for Trayvon Martin to see the gun and to reach for the gun. And that's the most critical issue in this case because all of self-defense depends on that.
Judge Alex,
he didn't do that.
Judge Alex, Lisa's pretty critical of the overall presentation by the prosecution. How did you see it?
I didn't think it had the power it needed to have. The prosecution has got a difficult case and they needed to have a very powerful closing. But I think, you know, we're not done. The prosecution has tomorrow, and I think Guy's closing will be much more powerful. But I totally agree that when you're telling the jury, when you're giving the jury questions, all you're saying is the defense is going to get up there and say, you know why they're asking you questions? Because they don't know either. Just like when they asked DeMaio, you don't know who threw the first punch. The natural reaction is, neither do you. And that's the problem with the prosecution's
Mr. Davis, there was another aspect of the closing that came up time and again. De La Rianda raised this potential inconsistency with Zimmerman's testimony to police that Trayvon Martin was circling the car. Here's part of it.
Just as important is the fact that he's saying this man, Trayvon Martin, is circling his car. So he's in such dire strait or so fear that he gets out of the car to go follow him. So he's either truthful in saying he's circling the car or he's lying about it. Either way, it shows that he's not telling the truth.
Joseph Haynes Davis, how effective was that aspect of the prosecutorial close?
Well, I think it's very effective in the sense that, and again, I've mentioned this on the show before, I'm a concealed weapons holder, a law-abiding gun owner here in the state of Florida. And when you are in a situation like that, you have an opportunity to stay within your safe zone. And that's how I was trained in my training. And I believe that in that instance, what the prosecutor is saying is that if he's in the car and someone's circling your car, you have a chance on the phone to say, hey, look, he's circling my car, and then drive away. Or move to another location where you can look to see where the signs are, the signage is on the street, etc. You are in your safe zone. So you don't have to get out of the car, and I think that that is what Mr. De La Rianda was possibly trying to get over to the jury.
Lisa Bloom, Alex Ferrer, and Joseph Haynes Davis are all staying with us, and when we come back, we'll take a closer look at the often tense relationship between Judge Nelson and Zimmerman's defense attorney, Don West. This is Hardball, the place for politics.